Hi, everybody, and welcome to Mental Health Hygiene Anxiety Disorders, brought to you by the Piscataway Public Library, as well as the Urban Health Collaborative, which is brought to you by Zaire Ali. Zaire, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming, and I really appreciate you all joining us tonight. So, as Karina said, we're going to go over mental health hygiene. We're going to talk about anxiety disorders tonight. So, just to give you all a little background, my name is Zaire Ali. I am the founder and executive director of the Urban Health Collaborative. I'm from Plainfield, New Jersey. I have master's degrees in public health and education, and I'm a current PhD student in public health. And my concentration is community health and health policy, and my background are in children, youth, and families, urban education and school climate, and also urban health systems. And who are we? I'll tell you a little bit more about us. So the Urban Health Collaborative, our mission is to shift mindsets and help the world believe it can be a better place. We collaborate with local, state, and national partners to bridge the gap between healthcare and education to lessen the burden of health disparities in urban communities. The Urban Health Collaborative strives to improve the overall health and well-being of all youth and their families living in urban communities, central and northern New Jersey. We help communities learn new skills and teach them how to use their in their everyday lives to help better preserve their mental and physical health, to prevent mental illness, chronic disease, co-morbidities, and to learn how to better empathize with people in their everyday lives, regardless of race, gender, and identity. So today, what's on our agenda, we're going to go over what is anxiety, how to identify behaviors that might lead to anxiety or someone who might have anxiety, treatments to help with anxiety, tips on what to tell a loved one who's experiencing anxiety, and we're just going to go over some questions. Hopefully I give you guys a lot of information so you don't have many questions, but if you do, please save them to the end or just pop them in the chat for me, please. So what is anxiety? The Mayo Clinic defines it as the intense, excessive, and persistent worry and fear about everyday situations. Oftentimes, anxiety disorders involve repeated episodes of sudden feelings of intense anxiety and fear or terror that reach a peak within minutes. So you might have panic attacks. And the causes of anxiety aren't really fully understood. It could come from life experience, traumatic events, and also it could be genetic. So it could come from someone in your family if they have it. And a lot of times, if we have anxiety, we might not know it if we aren't studying mental health or if we don't regularly see a doctor and really talk about our mental health. So some symptoms of anxiety, you might feel nervous, restless, you might start sweating, you might be trembling, you might feel weak or tired, you might have trouble sleeping, you might have gastrointestinal problems, GI tract problems, difficulty controlling worry, and having the urge to avoid things that might trigger your anxiety. So you could just look at this symptoms. This isn't an exhaustive list. These are just some of the symptoms that I've felt that are most common. And some anxiety facts. So for of you who didn't know, like I said earlier, some risk factors for anxiety include genetics, brain chemistry, and life events. About 40 million American adults have anxiety disorder. We're going to go over the different types. And about 36.9% of people affected only seek treatment. And women are twice as likely as men to have an anxiety disorder. And that is very important to understand because when we look at the general population, women are already minoritized by a lot of communities. So if you think about that, you think about the social determinants of health when they are related to women, then you might understand why women are twice as likely to have an anxiety disorder. And there's a lot of different types of anxiety disorders. We're going to go over the most common. General anxiety disorder includes the persistent and excessive anxiety and worry about everyday routines, activities, or just various events. social anxiety, the fear of social situations such as public speaking, parties, speaking to new people, specific phobias, the fear of objects, situations, or animals. And then you have post-traumatic stress disorder, which is anxiety to experiencing a traumatic event. So generalized anxiety disorder is really prevalent and is highly disabling mental condition. And a lot of people have it and they might not even realize they have it, but the people who have been diagnosed, which means it's really impacted their life severely enough that they had to seek medical treatment. There's a lot to learn about it still. We're still trying to understand biomarkers and just really trying to understand what string of events or what combination of DNA or life events that lead to anxiety diagnosis, especially generalized anxiety disorder. When you have GAD or generalized anxiety disorder, we try to accommodate and support loved ones when they have a physical injury. So, we got to think about that the same. We should, give that same support and love to a person who might have anxiety, because it's no different. You might not be able to see it, but the person who's experiencing it, they feel it. And there's a lot of evidence about neuroimaging and genetic markers and just different ways to measure anxiety to really apply evidence-based treatments to it to help reduce it. Then you have social anxiety, which involves high levels of anxiety, which are related to fear and avoidance of social situations due to feelings of embarrassment, self-consciousness, and concern about being judged or viewed negatively by others. So when you think about that, if you think about an aspect in your everyday life, you might just get embarrassed for going to school because your clothes might not look as nice as somebody else's. Or, you go to work, somebody might have a brand new car, but you might have other responsibilities to worry about. So getting the nicest car isn't on your agenda. And, some things about social anxiety, you might really worry about the way others might notice you, what you're wearing that day. You might have physical symptoms that may cause you to get embarrassed. Your face might turn red, or, your skin might get a little pale. You might start getting sweaty hands, and your voice might start to tremble when you're experiencing social anxiety or just any type of anxiety attack at all. Then there's specific phobias, which can get characterized by major anxiety when you're exposed to an object or a situation which you might be scared of, or which may elicit some type of physiological response. For example, people who are afraid of airplanes, tight spaces, certain animals, loud noises, thunderstorms, fear of natural disasters, getting shot, just seeing blood, and other things of that nature. And then we're going to go over a little bit of post-traumatic stress disorder. Some of you might know it as PTSD. And post-traumatic stress disorder is a mental health condition that is triggered by a terrifying event, either experiencing or witnessing it. And now there's a lot of new research coming on about the news and what's been happening in the last, I would say, decade about police shootings being recorded. That's also being looked at, and seeing how that impacts people and how that third person perspective, what we should do to prevent that from impacting people negatively. Because as we see, social media, TV, the news, there's just so much negativity, so that impacts us. And when we have PTSD, there's some things we might have flashbacks of, we might have nightmares, we might have just severe anxiety over the smallest things. When a person is diagnosed with PTSD, or just even the symptoms, so we could look out for it, a person might have extreme change of mood. They might avoid doing things they used to really enjoy doing, or going to some of the places in their past life, who might be triggers now, but in the past might have brought them extreme happiness. So if a person is very withdrawn from their friends group or from their family, or maybe somebody from your religious group or from church, you might have gone out with them every Sunday, after, seeing them, go out for lunch, go out for breakfast, either or. They might not do that anymore. A person might be very active in a friend circle or group chat. They might be withdrawn from that. So those are a lot of things to just look out for that we should just be aware of as humans, as friends, as mothers, as parents, all of the above. So there's some hidden behaviors, some with anxiety. A lot of times, when we have anxiety or someone we know is experiencing it, if it's not diagnosed, they don't know what's going on. They feel something. It might feel like a panic attack. It might feel like this intense, worry all the time. But they might not know if we don't have the right people around us to see what's going on, to know the warning signs, or if we just don't feel like we can express ourselves to our friends, our family, our parents, our teachers. So just creating that safe space for people around you to really be open with their feelings, and then how we digest it is also a big part of it, because if someone in our family or someone who's close to us comes to us about mental health issues or just feelings they're having, if we react harshly as a parent, as a teacher, as a mentor, we might ruin that relationship for the rest of our lives, for the rest of their lives, and for the duration of that friendship, relationship, or whatever it is. Those ramifications might not seem a lot in the moment, but in the long run, it could really tarnish a relationship. If I had a child and they came to me about mental health, and I reacted harshly to them or downplayed whatever they're feeling, or even just tried to say to them that their feelings don't matter and that they're younger or that their life is easy because I've had it so hard, I could ruin their relationship. And if something really is serious, and if my student or my child or just even a colleague of mine really might have a serious problem, they might be scared to tell it to the next person. And that's when it really becomes an issue. Because when we internalize these feelings, that's when we start doing injurious and self-destructive behaviors. And sometimes we might see people acting harshly outwardly to others, to themselves. So it's a lot of times, like, this slide, we might seem like we're okay, we might seem like we're doing fine on the outside, but what's really under that smile? That's the one thing we have to be really thoughtful of, and just really keep that close to our hearts, because what I'm feeling, what you're feeling, we might not be able to understand them, but we have to make sure that we validate the other person's feelings and be there, because that one call might be the only call you get. So just moving on. So some behavior, as we were talking about, procrastination is a huge behavior that kind of relates to anxiety, kind of might not, but if you think about it in real life, let's talk about the situation, right? If I'm a student and I know I have homework due in a month or a few weeks, and I wait till the last minute because, I have so much time to do it. No, I'm not really, really using my time right. Okay, but think about what's behind that. Why don't I want to do my work right now? I have nothing to do, right? So why aren't I doing it? Why isn't my child doing their homework? Why is my subordinate at work not being productive? Something might be going on that you may not see. So being kind, giving that space to be open to you is really important. And when you're thinking about this picture, thinking about this graphic, just leaving emails unread for days, that might seem so minute to some people, but opening that email, then try to tackle the task that might be behind it, or receiving the news or some information that may either be positive, neutral, or whatever, it might really just be enough to make somebody not do their work, not open emails, and not be productive. Or, like I said, you might see your child not doing their homework or being withdrawn. It's because there's a lot of things that might be going on that they can't process. So like I said, creating that space for them to speak about it is essential. Negative self-talk, that's another behavior, and negative self-talk is just one part of it, but negative behaviors, negative effect towards others. You know, you might have seen a student or a friend who always been really happy, cheerful, but then all of a sudden you just see their mood flip. That's something to be concerned of. So just thinking about that, thinking about people, they might blame themselves for something negative that happened to them. They might overreact to things that don't really warrant that reaction. For example, if I dropped a piece of cookie, right? Okay, boo-hoo, I dropped a cookie, big deal. But, you know, somebody who's dealing with extreme anxiety or just a little bit anxiety, a lot of anxiety or whatever, they might react differently. So if somebody drops a cookie and they start crying, start screaming, or just get enraged or get really low, look out for that, because humans, a lot of times, we're even keeled. So if we're going too high or too low, something's not right. And especially if the duration is for an extended amount of time, that's something to be concerned of. And that's when we should really intervene and look for ways to get help. And as I said, self-injurious behaviors, you know, example, biting your nails until they bleed, picking off the skin at the near your cuticles, things of that we should be concerned about. We should look at that. Some people might just say, oh, they're habits, but what's behind the habit? When do they do it? How often do we do it? What's the intensity? What's the duration? Those are the things we need to keep in the back of our head. Maybe you might see somebody who you're really close to. And you might see certain behaviors they have at the same time, every day, or at the same time during certain times of the year. Those are signs to remember. Those are just things to keep in the back of your head, and just ask the person how they're doing, and just, you know, just try to intervene and be a good Samaritan. Because what can hurt, you know? What can giving them the space to confide in you, or giving them the space to release them from whatever trance they're in, whether it's something about family, whether it's a bad day they had at school or at work, just being there for them and giving them a little bit of space, giving them some empathy, because we never know what's going on in the other person's mind. We don't have to relate to them all the time, but being neutral and just being a support is very helpful. It can be. And a person with anxiety, this is a very complex issue. Because when you think about insecurities can make people doubt themselves. They can make people hate others, hate themselves, because when we don't love ourselves, when we second guess ourselves, when we overthink our life, and we don't think we're good enough, that has a lot of negative effects, because we implode a lot of times. And when we constantly doubt ourselves, when we're constantly harsh, judging ourselves, and when we see these moves within ourselves, and we see other people reflect onto others, and you see a lot of countertransference going on, that's not normal. Because, you know, people like to love each other. People want relationships. People want to enjoy the community around. So when we're withdrawn and we implode and we start to really let our insecurities take over our lives, it impacts us, but it also impacts the people around us, because there's this dark cloud that just follows us. And even when we try to see happiness, it's hard. So that's a lot of what anxiety does. It attacks us from the inside out mentally, and then it goes physiologically, then it goes your physical, and then after that, your synergy is just thrown off, and it's really hard to get back in that groove that we might have had, or we might have never had. So it's a complex disorder, and as you know, as humans, a lot of what we're doing is learning and trying to get information. So whoever is here, thank you. Hypervigilance is another aspect of anxiety. And it's more related to PTSD, but anxiety and PTSD are under the same umbrella. So when you see somebody or even yourself constantly checking your surroundings, always feeling uneasy, they're paranoid, they have intrusive thoughts, disassociation. You might see somebody that just seem like they're zoning out for minutes at a time, or they might be filling their thumbs for hours. So even when you go to the movie theaters, sometimes people just are eating popcorn. Then after the movie, you ask them how was the movie, they can't tell you, or they can't really describe it because at the moment, whatever was going on in their head, they forgot about it because they found something, whether it's positive or negative, but in that moment, which is negative, to disassociate with and just lose touch with reality. And when you think about your thoughts, a paranoid thought could be described as a particular type of thought. And you could really think about it as we react to the possibility of some threat, whether it's real or perceived threat. And when you think about that in the whole, if it's real, okay, your own brain is constantly thinking about it. So it's putting you on edge. It's making you your blood pressure raise. It's making your heart work, which is putting you in a constant state of hypervigilance, which isn't good because that's like when you're always stressed or anxious and you have a lot of hours of hypervigilance in your life, that relates to higher chance for heart disease. So be careful and just take care of yourself and really try to just relax. And if you see somebody like that, you should talk to them. Try to calm them down in a moment and just be a solid object for them. And another part of anxiety that is a lot more common than we think, but is oftentimes disregarded and ignored is the decreased social interaction. Because we might see people and they might be like, oh, Janet, she's always like that. She doesn't talk to anybody. She's always been to herself. But has she really been? How long have you really known Janet? How much have you paid attention to them? So if at first, if your first instinct is like, hey, like something's not right with them today, or like something's off, that's a good thing because you're being aware of your surroundings and you're being empathetic towards others. So it's not bad to check in on somebody, but it's also important to know that checking in is half the part, but having information will arm you and give you weapons to help combat, anxiety in your own life, help others around you, and also spread knowledge to others, because a lot of this is spreading that knowledge to others through some type of truthful source. So that's a way to just make people that are dealing with anxiety better for you to interact with and better for them to interact with the world around them. And just thinking about the social anxiety disorder itself, you can sometimes refer to as a phobia of social events or just social places. And you can also think of it as a type of anxiety that causes fear, especially social settings. And I know that sounds redundant, but when you think about the social setting, you have to think about all the different places it could be. It could be a place of, religious belief, like a church or mosque. It could be a school. Just going to school can either make or break some students' day, because if I'm from a poor family or a lower income and I go to school with people who may have more money than me or maybe wealthier, I'm going to go to school every day. And if I'm not secure or if I have some anxieties about that, I might go to school hating myself or resenting myself, my family, because I have less than, and the world around me doesn't really teach others how to be kind to people who might have less than. So there's this double whammy. You might have this internal battle of anxiety you're dealing with, but then you have the community around you that's picking on you and not really supporting you. So how do we treat anxiety? If anybody here, if they're, you know, aware of anxiety or have heard about it, if you don't mind, can you just put into the chat box some ways that you think would help treat anxiety? Yeah, so prescription medication, that's one. Just keep the chat open for a few more seconds. Square breathing. Breathing exercise, yes. Breathing's huge. Yoga, yes. Exercise, yes. Cool. Wow. You guys don't need me. You guys are educated already on this. Okay, so we're gonna go with some anxiety treatment. All those are the right answers. Deep breathing and meditation. Because when we deep breathe and when we meditate, it creates synergy with our mind and body and soul. And deep breathing helps increase the supply of oxygen to our brain and also helps stimulate our nervous system, which promotes calmness and just still. Exercise and yoga. Some studies have shown that when we exercise regularly and incorporate some type of yoga into it, whether we're taking medication or not, it's going to help us. A 10-minute walk, just some deep breath airs during lunch break, right? When you're going to get water, take an extra lap around the building, go outside, go around the corner. Just find ways to give yourself time for you and be kind to yourself when the world isn't so kind, or just when your day doesn't even allow you to feel like you have time for yourself. Acupuncture. It's a very old practice, but acupuncture has been studied more over recent years in a lot more generalized populations, and research shows that acupuncture definitely helps with anxiety because it helps release endorphins in your brain, and it also helps calm your nerves and helps with the flow of chemicals. So acupuncture it's not recommended by itself in conjunction with, you know, type of therapy or medication or regular exercise. It's pretty effective to help with anxiety. And last but not least, you know, just good old therapy from a licensed professional. This therapy is one of those things that's very stigmatized in cultural groups, religious groups, and just in the media. So how do I say this? Therapy might not be for everyone, but I would recommend everybody to go to therapy at least one time in their life, just to see how it is. Because as a parent, you know, if your children come to you and they have problems that you can't handle, or your religious leader might not be able to handle, or your family might not be able to handle, what are you going to do? It's great, you know, parents' love is unbreakable and undeniable, but there's just something about being in a room with somebody and you're 100% safe to release all your feelings is next to nothing that's comparable. And that's why therapy is in my opinion one of the best modalities or best treatments for anxiety and just various mental health disorders, because at a certain time, you know, when we're younger, it's different because we're still growing, going through stages of life. But after a certain point, when we're adults, it's scary to deal with our feelings and emotions. And the best thing to do is to go after them. Don't run from it. And that's what therapy helps people with. And that's what one thing that is misconception about it. People think that therapy is you just go there somebody died or you have like a tragic experience in life, but no, that's not true. Therapy, people just go for maintenance. The same way we go to our doctor, every month or every year or every 6 months for regular checkups. Why not do the same thing for your brain? Why not do that the same thing for your mental health, for your state of mind? If your brain isn't fully functioning, what is your body good for? If your brain is in the way of just being happy, if you have anxiety that's so crippling and debilitating, you can't even pick your clothes out in the morning without being late for work, you should go talk about that. And if somebody in your family or one of your friends has some type of remark, or they say, "Oh, you're fine," or they downplay you, you should, distance yourself from them. That's my recommendation, because if people don't respect our boundaries, our health, and what we're dealing with, then they can't really do anything for you. Because if you're trying to deal with your own health and get better, and they're not supporting you, they're only hurting you and making your road to recovery harder. And when we have friends or family members with anxiety, it's hard to be understanding and supportive, especially if we never dealt with anxiety. But these are just some things we could say to them and just really try to change our whole thought pattern and just responses to anxiety or how we might perceive it. So just saying things that, hey, I may not fully understand you or what you're going through, but I'm here. What can I do to bring you some comfort? Asking people, just really seeing what they need and how you can meet them where they're at in that present moment. Just tell them, I see the real you, things of that nature. Very reassuring statements, very enduring statements, just to give them that positive support that you will be there for them physically and mentally. Let them know that you're proud of them. Just letting them know that they're not alone, and that if they do need alone time ever, you're going to be there to support them and give them that and respect their boundaries. But being there for them, however they ask you, is ultimately the best thing we can do for anybody that's dealing with any type of anxiety or just mental illness in general, especially if we as humans ourselves can't understand what they are going through. Because my life, I've said this before, my life is different than your life, and your life is different than my life. And even if I have a twin in an alternate universe, our life is going to be different. The way I perceive the world around me is going to be different from them. What might hurt my feelings, it might not hurt theirs, vice versa. So it's always, and it's just utterly important to be empathetic to others and to also be kind to ourselves, because the world around us isn't, and it trains us to be hard on ourselves. It trains us to be perfectionists. It trains us to be better than what we don't even know we need to be. That's an oxymoron, and that's a hyperbole, because a lot of times we don't even know our own purpose. We don't even know where we should go, and we're trying to figure it out with the help of people who are also as confused as we are. So taking every day with a grain of salt and just giving yourself 100% empathy and kindness is all we can do as humans to support ourselves and to support others, because anxiety is a normal part of life. If I'm taking a test, I might feel it, right? But when anxiety starts to hinder our lives, hinder our everyday actions, interactions with others, that's when it's chronic, and that's when it's an issue. So just remember that. If you get a little bit of anxiety, it's good. But if you get a lot of anxiety and you can't shake it, and nothing you're doing can't fix it, and it keeps coming up, get some help. Talk to somebody about it. Go to your doctor and just let them know what you're going through, because if you don't, it's not going to get better by itself. Because just like if you get a cut, you have to fix it, you have to heal it, you have to cover it up. Same thing with our mind and our heart. when they get hurt, we have to treat them the same way as we would a cut or anything else, because it's no different. So thank you. That's it for the presentation aspect of this. Does anybody have any questions for me or any follow-up about the presentation that I didn't clarify on? Thank you all for giving me your time tonight. You could have been doing anything else, but you were here with me.
Tell me the name of the nonprofit again.
Oh, so the nonprofit is the Urban Health Collaborative. So you can find more about us here. And I could you can find more about us here, and I could put it in the chat. Okay, that's our website. So that is all, everybody. Thank you so much for coming.